All right, the Fed's primary purpose is to conduct monetary policy, meaning raising and lowering the level of the money supply. And they have three tools with which to do this: open market operations, reserve ratio, and the discount rate. We'll examine each one separately. The most important tool really is open market operations, and it consists of buying and selling securities, bonds, by the Fed. When the Fed buys bonds, it increases the money supply by increasing excess reserves and/or checkable deposits, depending on whether they buy from banks or from the public. But the effect is the same. The money supply is increased. Here we see how this works. The Fed expands the money supply by buying bonds, because when the Fed buys bonds, either from commercial banks or from individual people, the bond flows to the Fed, which of course pays for it, meaning money flows out of the Fed and into banks, increasing their excess reserves, or into the public's checking accounts. Both have the effect of increasing the money supply. So buy bonds to expand the money supply. Conversely, when the Fed wants to contract the money supply, to suck money out, if perhaps there's too much and inflation is on the rise, then it will sell bonds. When it sells bonds to the banks and the public, they have to pay for them, and the Fed has an inflow of money out of the economy. What if they don't want to sell bonds? Well, the Fed makes the price attractive, and they will sell the bonds and extract the money from the economy. Tool number two, the reserve ratio. You know already about the reserve ratio, the percentage of deposits a bank must keep in reserve. It can't lend out more than that. And the Fed sets this ratio. And if it wanted to increase the money supply, it could lower the ratio. In this example, we have a bank with $800,000 in deposits. Reserve ratio is 25%. That's $200,000. That's exactly what they have. They have no excess reserves. They can't make loans. Therefore, they can't create money, because when banks make loans, they create money. The Fed lowers the reserve ratio to 10%. That's $80,000. Well, now the bank has $120,000 excess reserves. They can go out and lend money. That would increase the money supply. Now, conversely, the Fed rather could decrease the money supply by raising the reserve ratio. Same scenario, and let's say the reserve ratio is 20% of 800,000. That's 160. They have 200 in reserves. They have 40 extra. They could go out and lend that. But let's say the Fed increases the ratio to 25%. Well, that means the amount of reserves they have, 200, is exactly what they need for deposits of 800, and they can't go out and make new loans. The Fed could even increase the ratio to 30%, creating a $40,000 reserve deficit for this bank. Then they would have to contract their deposits, run off depositors some way, or stop making loans and altogether. And that, of course, would have a very contractionary effect on the money supply. The third and final tool is the discount rate. The Fed operates something called the discount window, through which it loans money to banks when they have unexpected immediate needs for additional funds. It's not literally a window. I don't know why they call it that, but they call it the discount window, and that's where they go to, banks go to borrow money from the Fed. And the rate charged is called the discount rate. Now, the Fed, they could decrease the discount rate, and they would increase the money supply. They would encourage banks to borrow from the discount window. This would increase banks' reserves, excess reserves, and enhancing their ability to extend credit. This would therefore, of course, when banks make loans, they create money. This would therefore expand the money supply. So you would lower the discount rate to make it more attractive for banks to borrow at the discount window. This makes intuitive sense, because I stated in another lecture that interest rates, and the discount rate is nothing more than an interest rate. Interest rates and the money supply have an inverse relationship, and we see that here. Conversely, if the Fed wanted to decrease the money supply, to contract the money supply, it would raise the discount rate, making it more unlikely for banks to borrow at the discount window. And in fact, ultimately, raising rates in general, which makes money more expensive and therefore more scarce, contracting the money supply.